So next we're going to discuss the third adjusted entry, which is called the accrued expense. Your accrued expense. And we're going to open up with a definition of accrued expenses. So your definition of accrued expense is an expense that has happened or incurred. Remember, incurred and happened are interchangeable. An expense that has incurred, but it hasn't been paid yet. So an accrued expense, by definition, is an expense incurred, expense that has happened, but not yet paid. Very informal definition, but I'm going somewhere with this. An accrued expense is an expense that is incurred, but it hasn't been paid, right? And so we're going to break these two factors of the definition down to analyze how a journal entry should come from this. Now, just like depreciation, there isn't any initial entry for this. This is only an adjusted entry at the end of the year that you have to perform for any expense that has happened, but it hasn't been paid yet. Okay? So, there are several examples of an expense that has happened, but it hasn't been paid yet. And I can give you a quick one right now. Today is actually Thursday for me, and tomorrow is Friday, but I will not get paid this week. Why? Because I got paid last week. Okay? I received a check last week. I get paid every 2 weeks. So this week I'm not getting paid. Next week I will get paid, though, and I will get paid for 2 weeks. So, from FAMU's perspective of this particular scenario, right? They have a salary that has happened, right? A salary's expense that has happened, which is mine, that has happened as of Friday, tomorrow, but they haven't what? Paid it, okay? But the rule of thumb is that we always record revenues when they're earned, and we always record expenses when they happen. That's our definition of accrual basis of accounting. We always record revenues when they are earned and expenses when they incur. So the fact that FAMU has an expense that happened but they haven't paid it means they have to record it. They have to record it. So whenever an expense is incurred, it needs to be recorded, right? It needs to be recorded. So how do you record an expense when it incurs? You have to put it on the books. You have to increase that expense. So how do you increase an expense for an accrued expense? Anytime you have an accrued entry for an expense, you're going to debit an expense for whatever the amount is, and you're going to credit it hasn't been paid. So what are you going to credit? You're going to credit since it hasn't been paid. That means you still owe. So if you still owe, you have a liability that is created, and you create liabilities or you increase liabilities by what? Credit. So you have to credit a liability, a payable. So anytime that you have an accrued expense, your entry is going to always be a debit to an expense and a credit to a payable. Okay? Because by definition, that explains what an accrued expense is. So, for example, if you have to make an accrued salaries, because salaries is an expense. Accrued salaries. How would we journalize accrued salaries? We would debit an expense and credit a payable. What kind of expense? Salaries expense. What kind of payable? Salaries payable. What if we had to accrue rent? Accrue rent. Rent actually happened, but we haven't paid it. What will we debit? Rent expense. What will we credit? Rent payable. What about accrued interest that we have to pay? We haven't paid it yet, but the expense happened. So how will we journalize it? Debit interest expense, and credit interest payable. Accrued expenses are very easy. Anytime you see an expense, accrued expense, you go to this journal entry. Make sure you put the first name though.